Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good day everyone. So today we are going to have a presentation on an article review titled COVID-19 and International Trade Issues and Action, and are going to be presented by myself, Qaedi, followed by Syaza, Sarah, Nadira and Fatini, my teammate. Next. So the content of this presentation will be start with introduction, and then the content of the presentation, which is the purpose of the article, major finding and conclusion, adequate argumentation and evidence, reference, and also article contribution to the overall topic, followed by conclusion and recommendation. Now the presentation are going to be continued by my teammate, Miss Nadira, on the introduction.
So, the title of the article is COVID-19 and International Trade Issue and Action. The author of the article is Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development and was published on 12 June 2020 in the OECD website. Trade is critical to saving life and livelihood in the face of an ongoing global health crisis, and international cooperation is needed to keep trade going. COVID-19 is a worldwide humanitarian disaster. The downside scenario in the March 2020 OECD Interim Economic Outlook saw global growth half to 1.5%. There are four uh, things that uh, we can do to face a major confusion. First is both confident in trade and global market by improving transparency. Second is keep supply chain flowing, especially for essentials such as health, supplies, and food. Third is avoid making things worse through unnecessary export restriction and other trade barriers. And the last one is even in the midst of the crisis, think beyond the immediate. Next.
Next is the purpose of article. First is to provide a brief overview of the COVID-19, which had disrupted the framework of international trade worldwide. Second is to show how important trade is to save both life and livelihoods, based on the OECD on March 2020. Third is to show how government support is design matters, based on the OECD interim outlook on 2020, and the last one is give recommendation to firm and government to retain resilience in the global supply chain. Next.
Next is article's major findings and conclusion. Based on the article, the major findings is about the trade becomes important during the trade can save lives and needs to be done to be one of the priorities in controlling issues that has been brought by COVID-19. The OECD found out that there are four things that we can do in order to keep trade flowing due to combat the pandemic. The first one is improve transparency on the trade-related policy actions and intentions. It is to boost confidence in trade global markets and to help businesses manage money to cope with various foreign business environments. The second one is maintain supply chain flows for essentials. Supply for medical and food is essential due to fight against COVID-19, as there are no additional barriers should be added to this supply trade. Some food and medical supplies may expire due to the expiry date itself and condition of the environment during the transfer. Next, simplified export restriction and other trade barriers. It is necessary for economic conditions and to help to fight against COVID-19, as trade barriers may cause panic buying and high inflation. The last one is go beyond the immediate, as to pay attention to the design of critical assistance when countries are in crisis mode, as the OECD's ongoing work on government support and market distortion will have an emphasis on offering insights. As a conclusion, decisions on trade are crucial not only today but also in the future to ensure that trade will aid growth, as with COVID-19 affecting countries at various periods and rates, access to external demand through free markets and continuing trade would be critical for supporting and sustaining economic recovery.
Next, there are decade argumentation and evidence. First, boost confidence in trade and global markets by improving transparency about trade-related policy action and intention. Second, keep supply chains flowing, especially for essentials such as health, supplies, and food. And third, in the midst of the crisis, think beyond the immediate.
Now for citations and reference, the author have used important citations and reference because all the citation and reference used have been correlation with the issue presented. For example, the author of the article have presented a citation from the Agricultural Market Information System, and from an article from Bras Basho, a trade collapse to represent the effect of COVID-19 and to also to support the fact that international trade is collapsing due to COVID-19. Next. The author of the article also used current citation and reference because all the citation and reference used are new and updated to present the reader with updated piece of information. This is because all the citation and reference are used from 2017 to 2020. For example, the author of the article have used their own research, OECD 2020, 2017 titled Making Trade Work for All, and also several other citation which is from 2017 to 2020. Next. The author of the article also have used adequate citation and reference. This is because all information from the article was backed up by reliable sources. This is because the author of the article present the readers with facts and graphs such as from Agricultural Market Information System and International Air Transport Association. Next. Moving on to the contribution of the article to the overall topic of international business, we believe that the article have addressed the issue that have been brought by the pandemic to the international trade. And by doing this, the article gave exposure to the part of the public who doesn't have the resources to research about the issues itself. Next. The article also suggests possible solution to the main issue of international trade, and by the article has suggested several actions that can be taken by nations and policymakers, and by doing this, the article can give the global community a way out on the international problem. Next. The article also contributed a lesson plan for nation involved to learn from the past global economic crisis, and they have encouraged nations to learn from economic crisis, and by doing this, the article encouraged global community to and take a step closer to solve the global issue. Next. Last but not least, the article give an encouragement to improve international trade, and by doing this, the authors succeeded to encourage the world to have a contingency plan in case the global community fall back in the same situation as today by getting ready and improving the international trade. Next.
Next is conclusion. In our opinion, the article is easy to understand because it has clear point and explanation about COVID-19 and international trade, issue and action. There are many points that can help us to understand this article. As we know, the virus is spreading in wave with multiple nations coming and recovery at various times. Trade is necessary to save life and livelihood, but it takes cooperation and confidence to keep it flowing. Next.
Now, ending our presentation with recommendation, we believe that the article itself is a reliable source of information, but we believe there are several factors that can be added by the author, such as the author can add a clear guidance to improve international trade in a safer way, which means that providing a way to ensure the safety of the worker in the international trade sector. Other than that, we believe the author can add an encouragement to the for global cooperation rather than focusing on individual party. And last but not least, we believe that the author can add a more explanation on how the solution can solve the issue of international trade. So that's all from us for the first article review. Now, moving on to our second article review titled What Does the COVID-19 Pandemic Teach Us About the Global Value Chains and in the Case of Medical Supply. With the same theme, we are going to present this article review. Next. The content of the presentation is still the same. We are going to start with introduction and then the content of the article, followed by conclusion and recommendation. So introduction will be handled by my teammate Syaza.
Okay, introduction. The title for the article that we choose is What Does the COVID-19 Pandemic Teach Us About the Global Value Chains and the Case of Medical Supplies? It has been published on the Journal of International Business Policy on 2020 by Gary Garfield, who is in the Sociology Department, Duke University at Durham, USA. This article was published online on 15 July of 2020. Okay, the COVID-19 pandemic has caused a lot of issues, and in this article, emphasis is placed on a dramatic shortage in the medical supplies that need to treat the virus. A case study of the face mask value chain in the United States shows alignment between the priorities of US federal government officials and the strategies of leading US multinational producers of face masks, which result in the exceptionally costly policy delays in terms of health outcomes. Uh, to better comprehend these complex issues, the article will cover four related topics, which is outline the global value chain, research framework, and indicate how it focuses on pattern of governance and corporate strategies. Next, highlight the trade interdependencies for two categories of essential medical goods prior to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. Third is the case of face masks and N95 respirators in the US. And the last one is discuss some implication of the PPE case for more recently years, supply chains and post-crisis policy making in the future. Next.
Next, the purpose of making this article is to tell us that due to huge increase in demand since the outbreak occurred the global during the first half of 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in a drastic shortage of medical resources required to cure the virus. First is the global value chain framework that tell about the extensive literature that has emerged that track the global economy development in terms of major US and Europe companies' decision to shift manufacturing overseas and create cross-border production network. Second is recommend a few tentative estimates to describe the state of the medical supply chain ahead of the COVID-19 pandemic emergence in 2020 and many more at the International Trade in Medical Supply GBCS pre-COVID-19. And the last one is it also states that their review of COVID-19 effect on medical supply GBC showed the importance of approaching PPE and other medical goods from an evolutionary and strategic standpoint. Next.
Next is author's major findings and conclusion. The major findings is the COVID-19 pandemic has caused drastic shortfall of medical resources. This crisis highlights the profound global interdependency of the healthcare sector. The global shortages of PPE products emerged after the pandemic outbreak as many affected countries imposed export restrictions. Face mask value chain in the US proves misalignments between US federal government priorities and the plans of leading US global face mask manufacturers, resulting in extremely expensive regulatory caps in terms of health results. The global value chain system recognized competitive options for more resilient supply chains and varied supplier evaluation. Conclusions. As a conclusions, it has been focused on the industry's globalized manufacturing base, creating a good varied basis for sourcing critical healthcare products. The author also found out that during COVID-19, several firm-to-firm collaborations appeared in the case of ventilators, which is a more technology-intensive item than face masks. These kinds of strategic alliance may help in gaining better outcomes in research and development of the medical supply can be more effective as they may benefit each other in trade on providing best medical supply that can help to fight COVID-19.
Okay, next, the author advocate implementation evidence. First, international trade in medical supply GBCS pre-COVID-19. In 2018, the medical export has increased 45%. Second, police delay and lack of testing. According to modelers at Columbia University, US state could been prevented if stay-at-home intervention had been in effect. Third, demand spikes, supply shortage, and policy confusion. In US, a large supply of face masks is needed to keep up in demand across the world.
Now, for author reference and citation, the author have provided an important amount of reference and citation is because all citation provided have big correlation with the main issue of the article. For example, the World Trade Organization reference citation, title export prohibition to explain the cause of disruption, and United Nations Industrial Development to explain economic impact of the issue. Other than that, the author have used current reference citation. Majority of the reference used are from 2018 to 2020. For example, the author have used Medical News Today or title How the Coronavirus is Affecting the World to explain recent information regarding the effect of the virus, and also several other citations from 1990 to 2016 to explain strictly on economic and theoretical terms. And last but not least, the citation and reference is adequate because every section of the article is presented with a reliable source of citation and reference. For example, the author have presented graph from the United Nations to address about the decreasing rate of export and use article from weight, title development and change to explain about policy conflict that is slowing down global supply chains. Next. So moving on to the article contribution to the overall topic of international business, the article have highlight the sources of global supply chain problem because the article suggests that this problem are from policy failure and not market failure. Next. Explaining on how the global supply chain framework is functioning and how it has been affected. The article highlights to reader that global supply chain framework consists of labor, value, geography, and state policy, and also explain that if one of these factors disrupted, the whole value chain can be jeopardized. Next. The article have suggested action that can be taken and have to be taken to ensure the disruption of global supply chain to not happen again. The article suggests that policymakers should make a flexible regulatory policy to ensure the smoothness of the supply chain process. And last but not least, the article encouraged all nations to have contingency plan for black swan event, which is the article suggests that the country have to have a backup strategy to protect their national interests and in the future against crisis and also protect global supply chain.
Okay, for conclusion, the epidemic of COVID-19 continues to spread around the world, putting healthcare system under immense strain in the fight to save life. Supply chain is not only become more global in recent decades, but they also become increasingly dependent on key exporting economies. Next. Recommendation.
So before we end our presentation, we are going to add several recommendations. We believe that the article is a reliable piece of information, but there are several factors that can be added as a recommendation. We recommend that the author of the article explain clearly the consequences of the disruption of a disrupted global supply chain. Other than that, we recommend that the author of the article broaden the topic of the article and not just focusing on medical supply and essential as an example. And last but not least, we believe that the author of the article can emphasize precisely on the type of contingency plan that nations should have to protect their national interests and the global supply chain. So that's all from us. Thank you very much.